Welcome back to another edition of the Go Defenders. It's a new episode. We're glad to have you all back, and we have a very important topic at hand. It's very fresh and very timely, and that's this whole college cheating scandal situation that kind of just arose over this past week. You know, we all got higher education, and we know the process that it takes to put in the work to go to a college, and it's a very time intensive process. We all had to put in the work, and just hearing about some of the happenings that have been going on, behind the scenes, where spots that could have gone to deserving students who also put in that hard work have not gone to such students. And so, I want to take some time for us to all weigh in on this. So I want to open up the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's interesting that you have like people that already have privilege, right? Like you already got a leg up in the world. You've got money. I think Lori Loughlin, they said it was worth $8 to $10 million, and she spent $500,000 to get her daughter into USC, who did not want to go there anyway. Yeah. Was posting on social media about how she just doesn't want to do schoolwork. So you've already got a leg up, yet you have to stack the decks even more to get into these schools by buying your seats.
That's right. I mean, for years, I got my master's at USC. I lived in LA for 5 years. We used to call USC the University of Spoiled Children. Wow. So, I mean, that gives you, this is not new. You know what I'm saying? Like this idea that rich folks pay to get their kids into prestigious universities is not new. What I looked at when I saw this was like, yo, just to be frank, these kids got to be stupid as because, like, just to be real with you, because, like, the kid who has the prestige probably went to the prestigious prep school, right, the prestigious elementary school, where at baseline, if you went to UC Lab right here in Chicago, right? Yeah. So I went to University of Pennsylvania, and a ton of kids from UC Lab are there, but, like, I had to be the valedictorian in my school to equal up to, like, the person from UC Lab that, like, is A- student, right? And so it's looked at differently. I had to be captain of the baseball team. I had to, because my high school wasn't ranked where UC Lab is, or even, we're starting to think about these prep schools like Exeter or the Dwight School in New York, some of these places where I met kids when I went to the Northeast. And I'm like, yo, like those kids, they were able to get into Ivy League schools by having like B averages and like baseline test scores. And their parents had buildings and things of that nature, gave big donations or whatever. But most of them were alumni. The fact that your parents had to overpay means your shit wasn't right. Yeah. You know what I mean? It means like you were like a below average student that really shouldn't have even been in the pool of the competition, right? So that's a whole different thing than to say like, I want to hedge my bets and get my kid in, because the reality of it is when I stepped foot on Penn's campus, they had already told us that half the kids we rejected were valedictorians. That's saying a whole lot. I had to be valedictorian and get a baseball scholarship, right? So it wasn't like just you good because of your grades. You had to have like all these other things that made you well-rounded. I was like on the school newspaper. I was National Merit Scholar. All these different things added to like what rounded out my application. And I remember the baseball coach said, it's not a sure shot just because I want you here to play, because we don't give athletic scholarships. We only give fellowships. I'm like, so what does that mean? He says, well, you have to have the baseline SAT score. And he was like, this is what you need to do to get it. Once I got it, I stopped taking the test. But it was like, there's a lot that goes into that. So, they, off bat, I don't know if it's changed, but UPenn, I applied early decision, which is a binding contract saying if you let me in, I'm coming.
Right.
And they told me even from early decision, 30% is legacy. So 30% is legacy. That means give the rest of the field away. My parents aren't legacy here. So 70% chance that I'm getting in. So, I guess part of it is these are Hollywood outsiders who didn't go to some of these institutions. So maybe they have to buy their way into the first part, which is the buying the legacy, then bribing the people. But they did some Derrick Rose shit. They changed test scores, too.
Man, they were changing test scores.
I mean, you got to be pretty stupid,
man. They were suddenly being on the crew team when they never rode crew in their life. Yeah. Now, here's my thing. So it's been said that the kids aren't going to be charged in these cases because they didn't know about it. But here's the thing. how are you unaware if all of a sudden you're going
You got
to
3
like
extra hours on the test. You don't know that.
exactly, or how are you going to Penn on a crew scholarship, and all of a sudden, and you've never rode crew in your life, like all of a sudden you're on the crew team, you have a scholarship.
It's crazy.
How do you know something's not rigged here?
Or you got a 36 on the ACT or a 1490 on the SAT, but you have like a 2.5 GPA. You know your kid's aptitude. Those NWEA scores were all, you know what they were at before that, and you should know yourself. So obviously the kids knew. When I went to Mizzou, this is a real story. There's a lady named Paige Laurie. Paige Laurie is the great grand niece of Sam Walton, right? So Walmart money, billionaire.
Yeah.
So in 2005, they built a new arena at Mizzou, and they originally named it the Paige Sports Arena after Paige Laurie. Paige at the time she's a year younger than me, so she was 24. And they named an entire arena after her. Then it came out that she basically cheated her way through USC. Wow. Like completely cheated through college. Actually, they rescinded her degree and everything, and they had to rename the stadium.
Wow.
And so this has been going on like for decades. Like, it's just they got caught. And the crazy part about the story is that they weren't looking for this. They weren't looking. This guy was ratting on somebody else on a bank fraud case.
To just get caught up.
And when they started feds started pulling back them layers, like, where are these checks from? Where is this money from? Where is this money from? And when you can't answer those questions, now and he already pled guilty. He already pled guilty.
Man, watching that felt like a Billions episode.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was just crazy. And I just, when I heard about that, I was kind of excited for the podcast because I know three of y'all went to PWI. I went to HBCU for college, and went to PWI for grad school and teach at the PWI. So, man, when y'all first heard about this, I know, were you guys like thinking about those moments in school when people probably was like, yo, you don't belong here?
And then just from the college access standpoint, like, we work with a lot of kids. Those seats that they took are seats that could have gone to those kids. So.
That's super real. Particularly because they were faking to be athletes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even more so, not to say it like that, but
here's the
like
thing.
that's how we get in most of the time.
Those schools.
Even our best and brightest, a lot of them are playing on a team. I knew this happened. I played baseball with Rob Blagojevich's son, nephew. I'm sorry. I mean, he was a pretty good baseball player, but I don't know if it was the last name Blagojevich that got you up in here. Not that, it is what it is, and that's not the front on, who his family is and his talent, because he's a phenomenal lawyer at this point in life. But, like, when you would see that, or I would see Jay Penske, who owns Jay Penske Oil, when I see his son gallivanting around campus, throwing parties, when I see Ivanka Trump, who got waitlisted twice at Penn, all of a sudden slides in, you know what I'm saying? Like junior year, and all of a sudden gets to do, it's something going on. And Donald Trump Jr. did the same thing. He didn't get in the Penn on the first try. Both of his children, I want to say, went to American and then transferred to, because he wanted all his children to do Wharton, which is fine, but it's like, I know my parents didn't have that privilege of me having the luxury of having these back doors into the system. So it always was that, like, you got to work twice as hard to get half as far mentality. So, like, I don't even think I was like a blue chip D1 athlete, but I maintained my baseball status just because I knew it made me a more attractive student, and I knew it was going to get me more funding. The grades alone didn't make me stand out. I needed all these other different things going on that made me stand out, or like, that was the way that I ensured myself to get in to these schools, because I got into several of these elite institutions. But, like, I knew from all the recruiting trips that I was different, and that the other kids that went to these schools kind of had a different road. Like, once they got in, that was the hardest part of their life. You know what I mean? Like, all they have to do is get in, maintain a C. Daddy's giving them a job when they get out. Yeah, and that's kind of like a different path, a different life, which meant for me, like, not hanging with those people, but for so much, because they're going to get me on that C-level path, and I don't got a job waiting for me at the end of the rainbow. So, I mean, when I saw this story, I wasn't so much dumbfounded by what was going on. I was more looking at the numbers, like, whoa, they spent that?
Right.
That's what I was looking at primarily, is like, did they... because they recovered what $25 million.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Please.
Becky dropped $500K alone, I think.
Yeah.
And you know what? I want to kind of pile on to what you were saying about being a person of color, or really a black person, and having to work twice as hard when you're at these prestigious schools or just schools in general to prove that you belong there. And growing up, my mom always told me and my brother that we would get the best education that she could afford. So she was paying for it. We were going to go to CPS schools, and they're great CPS schools. And we went to a school called Ariel Community Academy, which has an investment program, and it's sponsored by Ariel Investments.
John Rogers.
Exactly. So my mom made the decision to enroll my brother and I into that school when we were in elementary school, so we can learn the importance of being financially literate. And so when it came to looking at high schools, she reiterated that we would go to the best school that she could afford, which would be a public school. And so I was looking at the selective enrollment CPS schools. And then I also worked really hard in elementary school to get great grades so that I could position myself to be able to, go to a good school. And so I ended up getting a scholarship to go to the lab school, as you mentioned, when it came time for me going to high school. And so, my mom couldn't afford to send my brother and I there, but I earned a scholarship from John Rogers to attend the lab school. And so, it was a huge blessing. I think this boils down to, at the end of the day, that parents want the best for their kids, but at the same time, you have to be a parent and encourage your child to work hard for these best things. You can't buy the best things for them. You have to encourage them to work hard, put in the effort, and then, it'll pay off. It'll all come together in the end. Because, these parents, they wanted to send their kids to the best school they could afford, but they didn't instill that work ethic that my mother instilled in my brother and I.
What's the thing that, I remember watching the TV show Entourage, and the character Ari, who plays the agent on there, he says, the biggest fear I have is that my son will never want to work as hard as I do, or something like that, and he'll expect me to give him everything. And so, I think on some level, just me being a parent, I think about this now, is you want your kid to be as accomplished as you are, but you can't forge that. You can't fake that. You got to either put them in the scenarios where they can thrive and push them when they're in those circles, because you got a seat at the table. If you're born with a seat at the table that I'm giving you, or whoever's giving you, you need to take the ball and run with it. Because I didn't grow up necessarily from the worst means at all. But I saw what my parents did, and I wanted to step past their first generation status and do at least what they did, and then step further, right? And so I think that's part of it, is maybe it is a chance where you could see what failure looks like. Just because you've succeeded in Hollywood and you got all this bread, if your kid ain't succeeding and he's an F up, you know what I'm saying? He or she is an F up. Maybe they need to learn what it's like to live in the real world and fall on their ass.
Yeah, I think failure is necessary. I think it's critically important to fail. I think you have to let your kid touch the fire when it's hot to learn that the fire is hot. You got to let them fall. And if you can pay your way through, it's like with Billy Madison, where Pops just paid his son's way through school. It's gonna come back to bite them, right?
The Truman
you
Show,
see it. We all
strings and shit.
Man, going to Marian Catholic for high school, which is private school. I seen all of those kids. I seen the Huffmans and the Laughlins and those kids firsthand. Kids who you knew were only there strictly because their parents could afford it and did not have the aptitude to be at the school. Yet they knew by going to Marian that it would, to your point earlier, it would get them into a good college. Yeah. Because having Marian on your resume means that schools are going to walk in there and they're going to give you a shot with a 2.5 from Marian, where if you had a 2.5 from Hillcrest, you weren't going to the same schools.
Not at all.
And so, for me, it was when I picked or chose Mizzou, I was actually trying to get away from some of the privilege. I couldn't identify what it was when I was a kid. I didn't know what I felt, but I just didn't want to go to school with those people. Then I thought that's what I was doing by going to Mizzou, and I go to Mizzou, and it was worse. You're walking in engineering rooms where you're the only black person, and all the white guys got the test already. They're frat houses, store tests, and they have archives, right? And teachers rotate the same test every 3 or 4 years, and so It goes back to the earlier point. Like, not only did you have the privilege of class and money, you have the privilege of race, and so you got to continue to stack the deck. And it's to your point. I get it, wanting your child to have the best, but you also have to make sure that when your child is there, that they earn what they're getting while they're there, and that they know what to do with it. I mean, like, obviously, some of those kids are going to get out of school, and no matter what degree they have, they're going to still leverage their parents' privilege to get the next job.
Of course.
Not being qualified to really do probably much about anything, you know. So
Most definitely, they're gonna fall up. I mean, no matter what, as one of you all like, man, was staying, it would have been a wrap. But yeah, it's crazy when you see that. And even though I didn't go to like most of those schools that you all went to, you still just saw like, man, like the privilege. Like you can see like from watching social media as that story broke, you just seen like so many like angry and triggered people who were in those situations where people told them, oh, they didn't belong to this school, only there because you're an athlete, or if they find out, they shocked when you're not an athlete and you're at this school.
Yeah.
When they're giving those kids athletic slots, though, like I was saying a little bit before we got on air, like, I mean, I'm not afraid to say that, like, most of the minorities on campus, at least Penn's campus and on Northwestern's campus, because I'm now teaching, so I see that, you know, they are athletes. So if you're faking slots, you know, the diversity is being lessened, and, like, maybe there's somebody who's on the cusp that actually is an athlete that this spot is being taken from. And so, I mean, like, that's not to say that, like, people of color need to be playing sports to get into elite institutions, but I'm just telling you from my small sample size of what I've seen at the 3 universities that I've either attended, taught at, whatever. A vast majority of us, even if we quit the team after we got there, we got in because that was a part of us being well-rounded. A part of us being well-rounded was like, we have a 4.0, we're in all these activities, and we play this sport. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't mean we were Michael Jordan or whoever, but we all were like on a team. So, you know, I played 3 sports in high school. So to say that didn't affect my application would be ridiculous. But I also know that if I didn't go to Penn, I would have went to Howard. So it's just, you know, suffice to say, you know, the elitism that goes on within these certain circles and behind closed doors, you know, it can be a turnoff to a certain degree. But, you know, like, that was the Ivy that I knew fit me. Like, I couldn't have went to Connecticut. I couldn't have went to New Hampshire. I couldn't have went to New Jersey. I could only do Penn or Columbia. Those are only 2 that I could have even considered. Cornell has a suicide bridge. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm definitely, who wants to be in that environment where things are that high pressured for real smart kids, right? So if your parents are paying millions of dollars to put you into these scenarios, you know, for me, it rubbed me the wrong way just to see that people are getting cheated, but I knew it was happening. I very much knew it was happening. Love to the HBCU family as well, just so, you know, to keep this clear.
Right. We are not. Actually, we said it last time, like, man, love to the HBCUs. We probably all would have went to one now had we got to do it again. So
Dad went to Jackson State, so, you know, I'm very aware of his legacy there. So I almost thought about that too.
Yeah, it's when the whole thing happened with Mizzou, with the whole racial stuff, and a lot of people back and forth, like, you shouldn't have went there, that's what you get. And I just look at it like this, man. Like, we all go through the same thing at different schools. Like, whether I went to Hampton, and obviously you all went to schools you went to, so a lot of the same stuff. And a lot of people, you like to think that like HBCU is like a safe space or a cover for society's ills. Some of that stuff was still there. It was still like inter-racism. It was still homophobia. It was still
colorism.
You know, it was still like city kids versus rural and country kids. It was still those divisions.
I guess the moral of the story is work hard, go to school, get a job.
Make a lot of money.
Do it the right way, the fair way.
The right way.
Yep, the honest way. So we love to hear your thoughts and comments on this, so please feel free to drop us a comment below or slide in our DM.
All of that.
We love to have the conversation. Very interesting thoughts and comments on this subject, and I'm sure there's going to be more to come to this, so stay tuned.